So I have spent the last 4 years at COA studying marine mammal biology, conservation, and policy, and one of the most difficult things for me has been trying to figure out which aspect of this field to get involved with. And eventually the large whale entanglement field really stuck out and became really interesting to me. So it didn't take me very long to come to understand that not a lot of data exists in this field, and the only data that we do have come from studies that like Laura has done looking at scarification. And these kinds of studies have shown that there are whales that look like this out in the Gulf of Maine that have got, many of which, humpbacks, finbacks, and right whales have gotten entangled at some point in their lives somewhere in the Gulf of Maine. And while these data are extremely valuable and important, they only address half of the entanglement issue. It's also extremely important to know where they're getting entangled in order to mitigate future entanglement events. So I oriented my senior project around addressing this huge data gap by working with the Maine Department of Marine Resources Lobster Endline Buoy Gear database, as well as Allied Whales Whale Positions database. Using Geographic Information Systems Program, or GIS, I mapped these two databases in order to gain a visual understanding of how gear and whales are overlapping, to what extent they're overlapping, to gain an understanding of how they exist in relation to each other through time, and thus to what extent whales are at risk of getting entangled in the Downeast region of Maine, which is the region that we're in right now. So using GIS and mapping these two databases, I created 8 maps, the first of which is depicted here on the left, and it is comprised of all positions for humpback, finback, and right whales from 2000 to 2007. And the remaining 7 maps are made up of the same whale positions, but also include lobster endline buoy positions from 2001 to 2007. Now, unfortunately, the lobster gear database was a little too incomplete to really analyze against whale positions, but fortunately, the Allied whale database was strong enough to apply some analysis to. The coast of Maine is split up into 3 zones for lobster fishery management purposes, and the first of which is the exemption zone, and this is an area where lobster gear, sinking gear is not required, and Laura talked a little bit about this. The second zone extends from 3 to 12 nautical miles, and the final zone, the offshore zone, extends from 12 nautical miles out. Now, my maps indicated that only 0.26% of humpbacks, finbacks, and right whales were observed in the exemption zone, and the remainder of these observations took place in the 3 to 12 in the offshore zone. And a similar trend was found for the right whale analysis. All of the observations took place from 3 to 12 nautical mile zone and the offshore zone. My map also indicated that there are 2 clear areas where whales are congregating in high densities, not only across months in a season, but also through multiple seasons. The first is the ballpark, what is known as the ballpark, and the second is Mount Desert Rock. And a lot of the data points that you see on this map are coming from students and researchers that were out there collecting this data for about the past decade. Now, having established these 2 hotspots can be really important for management because it indicates that we can pretty predictably and reliably expect to see high densities of whales in these 2 areas, and thus perhaps where gear should or should not be set and where regulations should or should not apply. And it can also start to shed some insight into how to make some more tailored management regulations that benefit both whales and fishermen. Unfortunately, both of these databases were a little too incomplete to really support strong extrapolations to base management decisions off of, and so the other half of my study was focused around creating a stronger, better study design to get a better understanding of how gear and whales are interacting in this area throughout the seasons. So I'm hoping to test pilot these methods this summer. And if they prove to be successful, I'm hoping that they can become a method that can be applied to survey the entire coast of Maine to get a good idea of how whales are existing in relation to gear and if there's any overlap in along the entire coastline. And if this is possible, then this can also have really strong management implications in that maybe we can start to create better and stronger regulations that benefit and reflect both whales and fishermen simultaneously. Now, at this point, my study is only 50% funded, so I am still looking into further funding options. And if this does become possible, I will be disseminating my results at the Marine Mammal Biennial Conference in Quebec City this fall with Laura. So, it's a lot of information. Feel free to ask me questions.